The very first item we have on the agenda is to approve the meeting minutes of August 8th, 2019. 2019? Yes, 2019. And February 6th, 2020.
Make a motion to approve.
Which one?
Can we do both, August 8th and the 6th?
Yeah, okay. Is there,
I'll second it.
all right, it's been moved and seconded. Any other, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so moved. And the second item we have is to accept the meeting minutes of February 20th for review.
Move to accept the minutes from February 20th
For review.
for review.
The second.
First and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. All right. The first budget we have tonight is budget 1410, the assessor's budget. And Paula, how are you?
Good, yourself.
Good, thank you. Are you here to talk about the budget?
I came just as a board member. I
Ah,
was not the one to be presenting.
okay.
I saw him downstairs, so he's here.
Steve? I think Steve is doing it.
Oh, is he?
He
I saw him from the back, so I think.
Oh, does he? We jumped ahead too fast?
I was gonna say, should we stomp on the floor? Is he underneath us?
Let me just fucking go. You ready for it?
Well, another item that we have on our agenda tonight is to vote on the recommendations of the special town meeting articles. Not that I want to take votes on those yet, but I didn't know if there was any discussion that you guys wanted to get started.
Yeah, Meredith, I can't hear you very well.
Oh, I forgot you were there, sorry. I was kind of rambling off. Was just saying, let's take a look at the special town meeting articles. Oh, I'm sorry. By remote participation, we have Jerry Screnchy. Jerry, are you there?
I am here, thank you.
Can you say your full name, please?
Very Frenchy.
That's her. All right, she cannot participate in the vote, but she is allowed to participate in the meeting. And she does not count towards our quorum. Sorry, Jerry. I know I was supposed to do that.
That's okay.
So I didn't know if there was any discussion that anyone wanted to get started about the special town meeting. That's coming up. This has to do with the possibility of land being purchased for recreational fields. And there are two special, or two warrant articles that we have to review and give our recommendations on. The first one is to transfer from available funds, which would be from free cash, an amount not to exceed $600,000 to purchase the land at Russo's. That's over on Lincoln Street. And the other warrant article is going to be to spend $100,000 on engineering for designing the development of that location. Now, I know Jan has been a member of that committee. I hate to put you on the spot, but can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so we had a lot of discussion around the needs of the town in terms of athletic fields. There's really a huge shortage, of fields that are available for the kids to play, and there's a lot of overlap and scheduling difficulties. In addition to that, there's issues with the fields in terms of like water and things like that when they're trying to get practice time. So we're really looking to try to find ways to accommodate all the kids that want to play the different sports. There's quite a few, soccer and.
Oh, yeah, I know my kids can't play because there's not enough fields.
Yeah, there's not enough fields, so there's a lot of scheduling conflicts, and then in addition to that, with the water problems, we get a lot of rain. That, there was one season they were talking about, they had to really cancel like almost all the games and practices because it was just so
Practice out of
wet.
town and.
Yeah, so we toured all the different, the basketball courts. There's a lot of challenges with the basketball court in the one school because there's really, like, you run into the wall. There's like no space around the court for the kids. So there's kind of a lot of challenges with the current facilities that we have. So we did a tour, we talked about all the different issues, and really, the best alternative is to find alternate space for the fields to be developed. And so this land came up, and they actually wanted quite a bit more than 600,000, but, David, did some negotiations, and, they, because the town wants to do it, and they wanna do a sports complex and stuff, they were able to, come down on the price quite a bit. I think it was $200,000 they came down.
It was how much they came?
I think they wanted it like 800,000. They wanted a lot.
That's what I heard, it was
Yeah.
around that.
Somewhere
I had,
around
not to interrupt you, I had spoken, we got there, and they were in the middle of discussion about that land.
Yeah.
'Cause they come in to see us on, for the taxes. And my only, I just thought of it right when I was sitting there last night, was the fact that, it's gonna be, and it's a good site for that, I'm sure. But the only problem I had as a parent or whatever, and soon to be, second-time grandfather, was the, if you guys remember, about probably 6, 8 years ago, we painstakingly, town meeting, approved a zoning change in there.
Oh, that's because of
for
the
almost a-
Lincoln Street.
What?
Was that for the Lincoln Street
Yeah, are you talking about
project?
Lincoln Street here?
Yeah,
Yeah, right, well,
About
across the
that
street, right. The meeting, town meeting, it was, you couldn't fit another person in that gym, it was jammed, and they approved the zoning change. And then I personally worked with on behalf of the town, we worked with the developer, Conway or Conroy, I forget, the guy, he's the one that did the rent them shops.
This is across the street, though.
No, right, but I'm talking about, that's it exactly, that's my point exactly,
I'm
that,
sorry, I didn't
yeah. They were gonna put at the time about 900, over 900, almost 1 million square feet of retail, shops and
Gonna
that,
be
or whatever,
dirty
right?
streets of
Yeah.
the Bridgewaters.
So I'm thinking, and that will come, because, that site's got, as I said last night, it's got broad frontage and 24, good visibility, and it's gonna probably, ruin our poor little town here as far as, but, it's gonna come.
Right.
But my concern was with this site, the fact that when that does come, and it will, they got 40 acres of prime time, and something's gonna happen, I don't know what it's gonna be. So between that zoning, that development, and then down the street, you guys have seen that big warehouse being built on the West Bridgewater line, that's a Wayfair furniture.
Yeah.
And I stopped and talked to the guys, that's, I think the Patriots complain there, it's massive. So there's concerns already in our town about the River Street and all that stuff. So my point here was the traffic, that type of stuff where you're gonna have a place, and it might be all right. I'm only shooting off the side of my left hip here. The fact that, that area is the traffic's count, right now, at peak, that area 106 does about 27,000 cars at peak hours a day. So with this coming in and people cutting around, all, it's gonna be like, Route 24 in and around that area. That's all I was thinking about that, the traffic concerns, Because something is gonna come in there.
Something's gonna go in
Yeah.
there, right. But those are all things to take into advisement as we,
And we nixed
Plan the
at the
town.
time of the town meeting, we nixed any type of residential development, figured it might kill the school system, I'm not sure how that would work. I've seen, stuff like that with the 40Bs, but I don't think would come. It's too valuable as, as some type of high visibility, big box store or rent them or whatever, so. That's all, something's gonna come in there.
Not the area across the street from where the fields are gonna go, right?
Yeah.
yeah, that was that spot on Lincoln Street where they were talking about doing that big development. So Russo's,
Just across the street.
Right.
Where the
Right,
airport is and
right.
Where they want to develop, where they want to put the recreational.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the
sorry,
other-
I forgot to announce her.
Yeah.
Jerry is on,
We, my office, a couple years ago, appraised some land up the street, a couple doors down from this, a bunch of acreage. The gentleman passed away, and they were thinking about possibly developing or something other. So in our report, that was talked about, that faction of, maybe more traffic's gonna actually maybe limit what goes in there, that's something that's, really good for that area. Because it's a great site for what you want to use it for. There people came in and talked to us about developing it, residentially, whatever, or 40B or something. But I was thinking as a park, and it get we take the kids over to the Bridgewater one now behind the police station over there, and it's like, going to a Sox game in Kenmore Square around there when it gets busy, like this thing will be, that's all.
How much is developable again? David answered that, but I
That site there?
There's enough for, a couple of soccer fields or one kind of all.
How big's the site?
soccer.
So the total site is
15.
15 and a half acres, 8 acres is all developable.
Right, because right, yeah, exactly, right.
And again, the 8 acres that is developable are all basically in the front near the street.
Sure.
Nothing in the back.
So we had a couple different designs that he did, and you could fit, some good fields, and then an indoor basketball court, and a little,
Yeah.
like a snack shack and bathrooms, and then even though some of it's wet, it's still good for walking trails. It's not like so wet that you can't use it at all. You just can't really
So
build
the
anything on it.
biggest need is soccer fields, we've got the baseball,
Yeah.
or will that move?
Yeah, no, I think the thought was one of the fields would kind of be like a multi-purpose
Yeah.
field, so you could play baseball there, but I think the biggest need right now is really soccer.
Definitely soccer.
And those things, are like, when you drive, like I was just up in Metro West doing something for a couple of weeks, and up around there, they're like, like weeds coming up, those indoor, outdoor facilities under the CPC or, whatever. And they've been definitely on the bounce about developing those things, sure.
Yeah, I mean, the difficulty is, there's not a lot of land in town to really even purchase, right? So, I think it seemed like a good spot, the location with, relative to the
Parking.
schools. We have space for parking, and then we talked about maybe some pickleball courts up behind the senior center here where, where there's, wherever we are, where there's space.
And what I was thinking was, you guys have all been up by the Rentham shops, around that Black Friday, whatever it's called, around the holidays, and the traffic's backed up out on 495, and it's crazy. So I'm just, not so much because of the project, but that whole area, no matter what goes in this spot here, housing, or whatever, it's gonna become,
I mean.
Crazy.
Certainly have
they're gonna-
traffic lights, I would imagine, somewhere along the line.
they're gonna have to do something like that, because their initial, we sat down with them when we had that zoning change, and the only really infrastructure change they were gonna do was a slight taking for some snow removal, a turning lane or something, but nothing major league, as you would think. Because on those state numbered roads, right, even like, anybody will tell you that's in that, trying to get a curb cut or anything, you'll wait 4 generations to get it, believe me.
I mean, there's something, they're gonna do something with it, so.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I would,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
What agenda item are you on? Are you talking about right now?
I sat down and the whole thing changed, sorry.
I think so,
No,
yeah.
sorry, I had jumped ahead to 3G, about the special town meeting articles, but since,
I know it's better, but why is he involved in this discussion?
because they're sitting here. But if it would make everyone feel better, I will ask that we
back
can
and-
table this. We'll come back to it towards the end of the meeting, or when we have
Kind of
more
my
time.
fault, sorry. Yeah.
No, I'm the one that started it.
That was helpful.
But let's go back to budget 1410, that Paula is not presenting, but is here supporting, right?
We had, last night, the gist of, with the selectmen, and it's really, my bad or whatever. We talked about a large increase in our budget, you'll see in front of you, was an increase in, and I didn't even think of this at the time, the clerical salary. We'd like to make, we have a gal downstairs, we'd like to make the position, it came in part-time, and we tried to do it last year to make it full-time, but at the last second, there was some money taken back for the town manager for some other personnel changes. But part of the concern last night was the fact that if we increase this to full-time, the person would now, or the job, or the person would receive benefits, and they're already receiving it. I forgot that she's 25 hours a week and has all those benefits, because she replaced Donna Carter, who was sitting there with 25 hours a week. So John and I was sitting there, and I thought of that, but I wasn't sure, and then we discussed it after we were done, the fact that part of their concern, the selectmen, was on this job, aside from the money bump, to be an increase to the town for the benefits.
So this would be going from how many hours to how many hours?
25 to what, 30? 25 to 35. And,
What line are you talking about?
Clerical salaries,
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah.
5112.
right at the top there.
So that it's going from 78 to 93,000?
Right, because,
Part-time to full-time?
For
It-
10 hours?
right,
That's
we have,
50,000.
right now, we have 1.5, the position, we have one full-time and one part-time. So the part-time position will go to full-time.
Those are 2 positions that we're talking about.
So
Oh,
okay.
is there something else in there that's driving the 15,000 besides
No,
just
that's the
the 10
difference
hours?
between, that's the 10 hours. But the
That's 10
78,
hours?
the 78,250 is two positions.
Right.
1.5 positions.
1.5,
And the request is two positions. So that's-
93.
Oh, so you want to go up, I
right.
see.
And then, if I may,
There was no contractual in there?
no,
Okay.
not yet. If I may, we brought it up last year in front of this body and the selectmen and such. And, you guys heard my war stories before. I've been doing this a long time. And I was telling John that, without labeling it on a piece of paper, job descript, in our office down there, in our busy office, there's a need for that. In fact, in my opinion, I've been doing this too long now, in my opinion, that we probably should have 2.5 people, but I know that's not gonna happen.
Well, could you better explain to me what it is you're looking to change? If you're looking to go from 25 hours to 35 hours on that individual, what does that mean? What's going to change in your office?
Well, a couple things. First and foremost, it becomes a full-time position. And,
But what workload-wise is what I'm
John,
referencing. Sorry.
oh, no,
Just two things. I passed out two pieces of paper. One is a revision, so it probably won't line up with whatever you have in your packet. I found a couple of mistakes, so I corrected them. And two, I passed out a color-coded sheet.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry, are you saying this budget that you handed us is the correct one?
That's correct. That's- So, that's John, did the revised. office get a new one? Did we get a new copy? I asked Linda if she wanted them yesterday, and she told me that she talked to you about it, and you
All
told
right, so
me.
this is the same one as last night?
That's
I'm
correct.
so sorry, I thought you
No,
meant.
that's good.
yeah, no biggie, yeah.
Yeah, we all want to be on the same page, I understand that part. And the other one is a color-coded sheet, just illustrative of one example of the reason and the justification and the rationalization for the request. You can see there are 3 years there, 2017, 2018, 2019. This is something that I talked to David about a couple of years ago, before we made the request for the increase last year. Enterprise cars came into town several years ago. That has had a significant impact on the assessor's office, because they have fleet vehicles that they move in and out of that facility, which, as you can see by the numbers, in 2017.
He's talking now about the excise building, our office facility.
Oh,
Yeah, we do
okay.
all that, with the messages there on that one. Yeah.
It's really just the bottom line. I mean, it's broken down monthly, but it's really just the bottom line. In the first year, 2017, doesn't have monthly figures because we didn't have this on a spreadsheet. This is something that we've recently developed as a result of Enterprise coming in and putting such a workload on the office.
Did
So
they
we-
just move in 2017, is that?
No, they moved in before that, but we were really just scrambling to deal with the number of excise bills that were coming in. And we, over time, organized it. We have a better handle on it. But it's still, in terms of work hours, it's a heavy workload for the office. So you can see for 2017, for example, we processed 631 motor vehicle excise abatements. These are abatements. 325 of those, or more than half of them, were for Enterprise. And what happens is,
Well, how many abatements did
Because
you
they're
used to
moving in
get?
and out all the time.
they're moving vehicles in
Right.
and out all the time. But,
Yeah.
you know, they lease vehicles,
Yeah.
they keep them in the fleet for a couple of years, they rotate them out, or they might even send them to different regions. I'm really not an expert on Enterprise, but what I am an expert on is the number of excise bills that we receive and the number of excise bills that we abate.
So
So that-
the abatement happens when they move the car before the end of the year, is that what you're saying?
Exactly
Okay.
right. It could be anywhere from 1 month to 11
To
months,
11, yeah.
actually. Yeah.
So this is
Are
showing,
you talking about the fleet vehicles that Enterprise has?
no, this is talking about the vehicles that Enterprise Rental Company owns. When they sell it, they turn around and they apply for an abatement to get the excise tax back. But I do have a question. This spreadsheet that we're looking at shows what percentage of the abatements are from Enterprise? How many abatements did you have prior to Enterprise, and how have you managed between then and now to get it done?
Well, you can see that it would be half of, on average. I mean, obviously, the commitments differ every year, but on average, if we look at 631, we would probably be processing about 300 excise tax
So
abatements.
is it fair to say that you only had 300 before?
I think it's fair to say on average,
Okay.
yes.
So how big of a job is it to process an abatement?
That's a very good question, and it's a difficult one to answer because it's not a continuum. It's not, we start
Right, right.
doing it and we finish. A typical experience would be someone would come to the assessor's counter, say, I got a bill for the same car, we have 2 years' bills. I want a payment. We say, fine, we need documentation of what happened to the vehicle and what happened to the plate, because we get audited and the auditors require that we produce that evidence. Typically, the taxpayer won't have one or the other or both, so we will tell them we need to know what happened to whatever documentation you don't have. Please bring it in, fax it in, scan it, send it in. It usually requires another trip to our counter. Sometimes they can just run out to the car and get it, sometimes they can go home and get it. Sometimes it takes longer for them to find it, especially if it's been a junked vehicle, because then they have to go to a junkyard, try to get some documentation that the vehicle wasn't indeed received by them.
I would imagine Enterprise is used to this. They have a system, so it's probably not as drawn out with
They're better.
Enterprise.
They're definitely better.
Without holding on this one thought, but you get it, that John made a good example there.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just asking for work effort on your part. Is it an hour to do it? Like, if they came in with all of the paperwork, is it take you an hour? Does it take you a week? Does it, I mean, what is the work effort?
I haven't done a time study on it, but I think an hour would probably be a reasonable estimate. Maybe less, it may be more.
The revenue stream from this, can you?
Typically, the commitments that I've seen, we'll get $500,000 billed excise,
Okay.
and then we'll abate about half of it. So they'll get $250,000 back. So
You might also want to,
Yes.
Can I do a line you're talking about?
We're still talking about the concept of how the abatement process works.
Is it in reference to anything particular in the budget?
Yes, how the clerical salaries are increasing.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Can I-
Okay, I just wanna
Can
make sure
I
we're
just-
following this discussion.
you might want to add that the new lot that's being built over there is going to add hundreds of cars.
Of course,
they're
yeah.
expanding.
Hundreds,
Yeah, they've been in contact.
yeah.
They've been expanding
Yeah.
the whole time they've been here.
Some-
Enterprise has been?
So it's going to
Has
add
it
several
increased the
hundred
number of
cars.
cars each year? Because it
Yeah, they-
doesn't look that way on your spreadsheet.
So, hey, Steve, I got a question for you. Do you know how much, the cars that, Enterprise keeps through West Bridgewater have added to the revenue of the town?
Yeah, we just got it.
No, seriously, Steve, that's a question for you. Do you know that number?
No, but I apologize, but it's not a question for me, I'm not an excise guy and all that stuff. But, that's not something I'm supposed to know off the top of my head, but it's considerable. But I think, we're going down the avenue of the enterprise rent-a-car, and John made a good example of it. I want to continue on further with this thought about the person and the position, okay?
But you're talking about you need a person because Enterprise rents a car, is sending all these excise tax,
Right.
abatements in.
Yeah,
That's
and-
fair, very fair ask. But what I don't understand is, if it's a fair ask, then how come you don't know? Because I know how much Enterprise adds to the town budget bottom line.
No,
You should know that if you're coming in
that
and
relevant
asking for another person.
For a part-time official. I answered it.
You should know that answer.
Well, I'm not sure, we're talking about the workload here, but
All right, wait a minute, both of you, please. All right, let's just talk about what the difference is in the hours and what that's made up of. What made you go with 10 hours to increase from 25 to 35?
As Steve said, and I concur, we could reasonably accommodate 2.5 people in the office. This alone is almost a full-time job. But obviously, we are trying to make that office more efficient in every manner that we can professionally.
Okay.
And we have accomplished quite a few things.
I just want to say, and I'm glad you said that, because part of my thought here was, between the lines type of thing, is that we have a person like her comes in, she's a real good worker, and just from the excise little volley here, you can see that our office, like I'm sure all the others in the hall, we're very busy. we have a lot of time and training invested in this person, and I wouldn't want to lose this person over the fact that she might move down the hall to a full-time job, when she's excellent at what she does. She's definitely cost-effective, and, we talk about this. And this is also the tip of the, with the exemptions, the abatements, the day-to-day contact, being able to put your hand on a question when somebody comes in. It's because a lot of stuff only happens once or twice a year, there's a long learning curve here. And we have, you would think, we have a lot of time invested in the position. And from what I can see, she does a very good job. And I will say this, like when I left Newton, there was 21 people, big city. Brockton, there was 14. And we used every one of them. There was a person full-time and this or that. Not that we would need that there, but I'm saying if it goes to the two full-time positions, we'll find enough to keep them very busy.
All right, let's move on to the next line, overtime.
May I just add
Wait,
one,
wait, 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 wait,
just
wait,
one
Barry,
more thing?
We never discussed, I didn't hear, because I'm hearing a lot of garbled stuff. This line
Help to
5111.
move that closer at all?
Going from $85,000 to $90,000.
Oh, you're right, we did skip over that one. So line 5111, you're correct, we skipped that. There's an increase of $5,000, going from $82,000 in FY19, $85,000 in FY20, and you're looking to go to, is this for you, John? This
Yes,
is your
and we're
line.
not looking to go to that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's a budget placeholder. My contract is up for renewal, and we have not entered into contract negotiations. I don't know what number they have in mind, they don't know what number I have in mind. It's certainly not going to be $5,000. I can tell you that in good faith. But I don't want to negotiate my contract here.
Because this is taxpayer dollars that you're talking about.
That's correct.
Yep.
And we will refine that number obviously, once the contract is negotiated and before we go to town
When
meeting.
was your last contract? Because if
Then
I
we can't
remember,
review this budget as it's submitted.
It's a three-year
Because that number-
contract.
I don't think we can act on a budget where a number is a placeholder.
well, right now, we're just reviewing.
You don't have to.
Right, so, weren't you part-time and then you went to full-time?
Right.
Which year was that?
3 years ago.
That was 3 years ago.
Yep.
So it's a
But
three-year contract.
didn't you come in and the contract was already signed for a budgetary amount that?
For 3 years.
Yeah, up
Yeah,
until
but didn't
FY
the-
'20.
So
Is
it's
that the one the
fixed.
town meeting had an issue with?
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
they've had an
Oh, yeah.
issue with,
Yeah.
Yeah, there was
That's the one.
initially about going to the full-time, that there's always, and we, I know from past experience, I'll never get used to this form of government, but there was an issue, I don't know if it was some type of agenda or whatever, we tried to make it full-time. A person led the town meeting down the wrong path, and they didn't approve
Yeah,
it. The
didn't
next year, then they
bottom
approved
line
it.
get cut?
Yeah.
But
That-
your
that was-
contract still would have been funded.
that's correct.
Right,
So that means you would have had to have come up with the money in your budget somehow to pay that contract.
Right.
So what items did you?
we had money from Donna.
We caught a break, so to speak.
Okay,
We lost a person. She retired. And she was at the highest rate of the pay scale. It's a double-edged sword because we lost a very valuable person. But on the other hand,
You
I'm
saved
so
money.
sorry, I can't hear you. Denny.
oh, I'm sorry. We had a person retire, and by virtue of the retirement, that
Retired in April.
freed up almost $12,000, I believe.
Okay, well, that $12,000, by the way, is taxpayer revenue.
Otherwise, we
So
probably would have had to go
taxpayers
for a
don't see it
transfer.
as caught catching a break. They see it as $12,000 that they paid in taxes that you used for something that the taxpayer said no to. That's how they see it, and that's how I see it. So I think it's a flagrant disregard for what the taxpayers said at town meeting. That's just my opinion.
okay.
I had a contract, it would have cost the taxpayers money if I had to sue on the contract too. Obviously,
Contract for what?
Yeah, I think that the issue, Jerry, as I recall, and
The board
you can tell
approved the
me if I'm
contract.
wrong, is
That's-
the contract had already been approved, so the town was already obligated to pay that regardless.
My question is, though, if that person hadn't have retired, what would you have done?
We would have probably had to have come for a transfer request, because we didn't have the money in the budget, obviously.
And if we didn't transfer it, then it would have been a lawsuit,
No, well,
potentially.
I think-
Potentially.
Yeah, potentially, or other contractors might not have gotten paid. They might have sued on their contracts, or we would have ceased services, and I don't think that would have been a good idea.
I don't, well, I don't want to go down that.
It didn't
Yeah,
get to
I mean,
that, so,
it didn't-
right, yeah.
We would have had to make some very difficult choices. obviously.
Well,
Sorry, I'm not trying to be, but you're talking about taxpayer money, and you just seem to think that, okay, well, we got 12 grand, so we're gonna use it for this, we're not gonna do what the taxpayers said.
Nobody's treating it like that. I don't know where you're coming up with that statement. Nobody sat here and said that we're gonna treat the taxpayers less than that.
no, it's okay.
No,
But-
please, you know,
no,
I
I'm
take
sorry.
exception to that.
All right, let's roll this back. Looking at the budget, I am a little bit concerned before we get further deeper into details, because
Sure.
you're coming in with an 11.88% increase overall, which,
Looking at the revised, it's
Oh.
12.56.
12 and a half.
Oh.
It's worse.
thanks, John.
I just want to be factual.
No, you're correct, you're right.
Excuse
The
me.
updated assessor's budget says it's an increase of 12.56%.
So if you increase this position from 25 to 35 hours, why would you need money for overtime? Is that,
Yeah, why would you need money for
is that for something else?
That would be for possibly two things. One, we have an employee who has 68 hours of overtime on the books already. And under the contract, we have the option to either buy that out or give those hours. Clearly, the conflict for me as the manager of the office is, it's hard to afford to give somebody 68 and a half hours off when we're pressed with trying to get our work done, which is why we're asking for the position. I mean, they tend obviously to overlap.
I do see, like, in 2019, in April, May, and June, it's crazy. There was like a crazy amount of,
Abatements.
yeah, the level of your work is just like a big bell curve.
Yeah.
Right in the middle of the year, so it's, right, you're gonna kind of ramp up to
It seems seasonal,
service those
right?
people.
Like everything else,
that-
right?
Yeah, it's not like you can,
The personal property, the exemptions, it's seasonal, yeah.
I mean, I
if we-
just took an average, though, of 600 abatements a year and just divided out. It's only like 12 hours a week.
But it's
right?
really an increase of only half. So it would only be 5 or 6 hours per week. Because if they were doing 300 in the past and they're
Yeah,
doing 600
right,
now,
right.
it's only an increase of 300.
Right, but I was just kind of figuring out how much time does a person spend just on abatements? I know there's
in
other work,
total,
right?
yeah.
So I was thinking that's 12 hours a week
Right, just
on
on.
average for abatements. And then I guess you have to think about what other work is in the office,
Again,
right?
think of this new lot that's going in over there. It's big.
Is it?
So it's gonna be several hundred cars, I suspect, they're gonna be putting in there.
They're growing. There's only one direction
Huge.
that they're moving.
Yeah.
That,
All right, so this, we were still on line 5111. That $5,000 is meant to be a placeholder for right now. I think we'll accept that as an answer and move on.
Yeah,
All right, and we've talked about clerical salaries. Does anyone have other questions on that? I just want to keep this moving so we can stick to our time.
right.
yeah. I mean, my only confusion is why you would need overtime
With the new
going
person.
forward if you have the new person,
Ab-
you wouldn't, right?
Absolutely. Legitimate, and I think an argument could be made that if we had some assurance, and that's the problem here.
Yeah,
We go to town meeting,
gotcha.
and town meeting says, no, you don't get the position, then we need the overtime.
Right.
If we go to town meeting, and town meeting says, yes, we'll fund the position,
Right.
I think it would be reasonable to cut the overtime.
okay.
We could do that on the
Well,
floor.
once town meeting says, yes, it's okay for the position, it's too late to cut the overtime, that's the problem. You go in with one budget, you get one budget. It seems like you want your cake and you want to eat it too in this budget, and that's what's confusing me.
All right, any other questions on I'm sorry, did you want to?
No, that's okay.
Sorry, Jerry, I'm not trying to,
Keep my mouth shut.
yeah, I'm just trying to keep it civil. Let's go on to training. I see,
I'm being perfectly civil, I just don't like the answers that I'm getting. I just think
I can understand that.
To a budget that's up 12%, and I think that it's not unreasonable to expect a coherent answer about why we're increasing a clerical salary, or why we're being asked to fund $2,000 in overtime in addition to a clerical salary, why training's going up, web hosting's going up. So many budgets are going up, and the overall hit is about 12%. So I think that you should come in prepared to speak very specifically to those requests, and I'm not hearing it. And I'm not trying to be difficult, I just don't hear the answer.
I will repeat what I said, Jerry. The union contract provides for buyout of overtime. I have one employee who has 68 hours on the book of overtime. I'm not suggesting I want to buy it all, but I would like to have some flexibility because the issue is getting the work done, not having people out of the office and not having the work done.
So is there a specific training in mind for the increase there, or is that what's the training?
Training.
That falls into the general rubric of the better trained all of us are, the better we perform our jobs, the better services we can provide for the
And-
public.
More time.
Part of that is, John and I are both, I get with the Commonwealth, the highest appraisal designation, appraisal license, and with the assessors, I'm also a certified assessor like John. So, and that's something, it's hard to come by, and I'm glad to say that I have it. But on the other hand, when you go in front of a judge to raise your right hand or talk to some downtown Boston attorneys when we're representing the town on some big case matters, that certainly has considerable weight. So part of that training is to keep up with those licenses and designations.
So it's class credits to maintain licensure?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
They
And
kill you in that stuff.
And it would be level funding if that were the only issue, Steve and I. But we have effectively 2 new employees. And I want to get them the training that they need and should have in order to do their job better.
Well, for new employees, I could see that.
Yeah, they offer, I mean, the Commonwealth in our business, when I started a million years ago, the training now, what they offer is considerably more than it used to be, and it's all real good stuff.
Why is there a difference between the budget that is in our Chromebooks versus the one that you provided today? There's $1,000 difference in that
Got it.
training line.
I cut it.
Oh, okay.
I cut it because I found 2 other areas that increased the budget, and I don't want it to be more than 12. I would prefer to have it level funding, quite frankly. We're obviously cognizant of the taxpayers of the town of West Bridgewater.
But you had said that those trainings are necessary for licenses. By cutting that $1,000, is that going to impede
Well, it was,
your training to maintain those licenses?
let me get on board with you. The training was 430, 850,
And you requested 2,500.
right, and I
And then
reduced
it
that
was
to
reduced.
1,500, yeah. Hopefully that will do it. You know, I don't know, each year, the amount of courses and what we're gonna do might change slightly, but they're out there.
In addition, if you go further down, I don't want to jump around, but it's related. If you go down to line 5731, that's an annual school. That's being added for the first time.
Oh, okay, so you took it
So
from
that's-
there and moved it.
So in one sense,
well,
that's additional
no.
training. I would like to send one of the clerical staff members to the annual school. It's an intensive 1-week training course, and I think they would benefit.
So it sounds like generally what you're presenting is that your department is growing, you need money to expand and for training. What things are you 100% asking for, can't live without, and what are some things that can wait a year? Because you have a lot of asks on this budget.
Yeah, and unfortunately, when you go through these things, the big, on that 12% or whatever it is there, unfortunately, probably close to half of that is, what you wouldn't see next year is the going from the part-time to full-time person. It wouldn't stick out so much if she was the person was full-time, and we weren't going for that $15,000 increase. That'd be something, so I'm sure you guys see a lot of budgets, obviously, and you probably don't see too many going up 12% unless it's personal services or something.
But in answer to your question, for this year, live without the annual school, $1,000. It's new, it's being introduced.
And it's gonna be there down the road, yeah.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the $3,000 change. That one's up 150.
The web hosting,
Web
Oh,
hosting,
web hosting.
what is that?
two things. And we've had long discussions about this with the Finance Committee, and I appreciate your support. The first thing that we did was put the property record cards online.
I think we had the discussion here, and we really encouraged
We
it. So
sure
I was
did.
really happy,
Yeah.
because it helps me tax-wise. I can't even tell you. But anyway.
Absolutely, yeah. Appreciate that.
Thank you for the feedback, and we do get positive feedback on a regular basis. So that was $2,000 annual fee. At that time, we had a discussion that we also wanted to get the assessors' maps online.
I remember
And
that.
frankly, we've been trying to do that for 2 years.
Okay.
This year, we were successful in doing that. So that's an additional $3,000 for the web hosting for the maps.
So
And
they're online, and that's a contract, oh, sorry, I cut you off.
as we speak, I'm trying to get them online. They should be online within a week or two.
And
Okay.
why
We
would
have-
that be important that we have that online?
For the same reason that we have the property record cards online, it's almost a given today.
You go
We're prob-
online,
we're
you
probably the-
search.
Is
Yeah.
it individuals that are looking at it, you think?
Yeah.
Well, I do,
Well,
as a
real estate
CPA,
people,
Yeah, you-
CPAs, yeah.
I do it
Yeah.
every day.
I gotta tell you something, though, it would be, the benefit the town somehow if we could have some, when they come online, some propaganda out there for the taxpayers, because, Joe Q taxpayer who might not, from like myself, the old school, is probably afraid to look at, go on the computer and try to, it's relatively easy. Parallel to this is the state system, which has been upgraded and wonderful for years, the Mass GIS, depending on the local compliance and such. But there's two outlets where people can go in, look at with the Mass GIS, depending on what the town compliance is, you can go in and see, delineated wetlands, easements, the same as that thing coming online. But a lot of people don't take advantage of it because they're probably not knowing about it or scared to death to even try to look at it.
Right.
So we might want to think about that, just.
And in answer to your question, the general public looks at it, and then there's a whole array of professionals that look at it.
Well, this should dovetail
Accountants and
into your
attorneys.
ability to reduce the cost of people at the window.
Right.
Absolutely,
Right.
absolutely.
Although, I was one that sat here and said for years, I don't want the PR property record cards to go online, because we made some, decent nickel and dime money.
I remember
As,
that.
it was like something like $800 a year or something. And I know we can use every dime we get, but now going forward, and DOR was proclaimed to all the towns, you can only charge a nickel for them. In the old, like in Duxbury, I paid $5 once for a property record card, back in the old days. So there's, on a across-the-board thing, they said 5 cents. So now when I go into wherever, they throw it at you, we don't want your nickels,
One of the things that I know you got a lot of pushback on previously, and you may end up again, when you went full-time, there was discussion about the contractual services reducing, and I see it's going up again.
Yes.
Is there something behind that?
Yes. Those are just two items. There's the license fee for Patriot Property. It's another way for them to make a few dollars, and they increase it a couple of $100, several $100 per year. And the other one is the copier scanner machine that we have in the office,
Okay.
which is a annual contract. Well, actually, it's a monthly billed annual contract.
I'm glad you asked that question, because one quick thing is that in regards to actual, by going John full-time and what we try to do in the office, I really can't put, I can't bring out a financial statement and put down money saved on nickel and dime. But believe me, going through like some of the stuff we're dealing with now in some of these larger court cases, even myself sitting at home, or John, on his own time, whatever, and office time, the time that we're putting into some of these things, certainly the town's getting their best effort on as far as the dime goes in that. And by him going full-time, that furthers that. But I can't sit down and say on this one it was, $5,000, $3,000, but,
Yeah, I mean, because this.
it happens all the time now.
Steve, you know what, Steve, you've been saying that every year, and we've been listening to you. But I think at some point, you might need to start quantifying those statements. You
We
can
had
say
that-
every
We have been.
we save
Yeah.
money, we make money, but I can't tell you which cases. But you're gonna need to start quantifying those, because that's not fair to
That's,
I-
And that's how I feel about it about now.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I would say,
And at this point, I feel like we need to add something to it.
that's a fair criticism, and we've had that conversation, and you, Jerry, have given us positive feedback on that. And we should.
You have never come to a meeting and given us, or the taxpayers, and given them any facts, and then you wonder why they're angry. You got a bunch that's going on
referring to the
12%,
court
you have
cases?
this wish list.
Yeah,
There's gotta be a number in there somewhere, right?
yeah, it's all over the board though, depending, you know.
That's a fair criticism.
Okay, I want to get back to the budget. I still have, I'm sorry, one last question about this $3,000 on the web hosting. So is that contractual now, going forward?
It's contractual, yes. And to put a little more meat on that bone, the overall cost to get up and running was $6,950. It was $3,000 to create the database, and then and so that was a one-time charge. And then there was a $950 one-time fee that, I forget what the company calls it, but nonetheless, it gives the office access to that database. So we can go in and we can make whatever we think are appropriate changes to it. But we have to have that license to do that. And those one-time costs were paid at the end of the fiscal year. And going forward contractually, the town's cost will be $3,000 to host it, to put it up on the web.
3,000 a year.
$3,000
Yeah,
a year.
but initially it was more to get it up and running.
Any issues? Does it include your maintenance and if any issues? If it goes down, you have your proper, they take care of it. It's not something.
That's right. With the caveat that if we make a request, we'd like to have something, then they would charge
Yes, yeah, yeah, that usually is.
for our wish list. But maintenance, yes, is included.
But- and
It goes
patching.
down, they put it back up.
I know you're trying to keep it on schedule.
Well,
Does anyone
I
have-
think that's a smart way. No, I think that's a smart way. You let the vendor do it, let them do their jobs. That way you don't have someone trying to understand how to patch a virus or how, if it goes down, you don't have. so-
That's right, yeah, because we're not that sophisticated, so.
All right, I think we've made it through all the line items. Does anyone have any questions?
No, I would just add, if you can possibly come up with some type of number on court case abatements that you've won.
Yeah.
You asked us last
Since
year,
you
we
came
said that we
on,
did it,
since
we
you
didn't do
came
it.
on, yeah.
I apologize.
I think it would
I
help
will
your
do
case.
that.
Yeah, I think when you
Well-
go to town meeting, you might need to.
They want to hear that.
We're,
Statistics would be very helpful.
we're dealing with a real, for the town's liability, we're dealing with a real big one. And I'll put something together on it because I don't know if it's gonna go forward or not, I don't want it to. But if it gets adjudicated, it will be in our favor. It's gonna cost us a lot of money. But John and I are trying to work, in-house on that and save the town some money. And if that happens, I'll write down some numbers.
Well, maybe you should look at history, so you don't have to speculate
year
about what's
or
gonna
so,
happen with this
right.
particular case.
Right.
But say, last fiscal year,
Yep.
our income, because of our ability to act in your favor, town, is,
And that
we
won't-
have an additional
right.
$200,000.
And that's a point well taken, because my full-time job is I represent adjacent communities, on a fee basis for the same purpose, represent the town, we go into court and represent towns on big commercial industrial stuff. So I'm working that side of the fence,
That
so,
would be meaningful to the people in town.
and those costs are substantial.
I think one case comes to mind where I believe we saved the town $65,000.
Well, that's very important to let people know.
And part of that too, don't forget, is not just us sitting at a table and knocking heads with each other, but actually out of the overlay account or the levy, on giving money back by the harder we work and the more we know about our local market and the more professional we are, et cetera, that's part of the savings too. So rather than give back, there was one here that I worked on myself, and our liability was huge. The tax bill was over $450,000 for 3 years total, and they got zilch. because I'd done something for a similar community. I didn't bother writing it down, I just wanted, what about my business? But that was a huge win-win for the town.
You want to whisper that one in my ear?
Yeah, I mean, those are the.
Those
kind of
attorneys
things-
come in, they'll get 3%, so you throw a bone at them. If they come into a town that doesn't have a John or Steve sitting there, they'll get their small bone and run away happy.
These are anecdotes that the townspeople need to hear.
Yeah.
'Cause
Sure.
You're
Say, I need
proving
a
your value to the town.
Increase
that
here,
way.
but this is what I'm saving you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No one's gonna argue.
And yeah, I agree with that, it's just, I'm getting frustrated with a lot of this stuff, believe me, so.
All right, unless there are any other questions on the budget?
Well, just on that note, I've said it every time I come before, I think I've said it every time I come before the Finance Committee. Mr. McCarthy, I consider to be in the top 3 in his profession as a certified general appraiser. I've worked in other communities, and I can tell you from personal and professional experience, I've had attorneys representing taxpayers, I've had tax reps who are a different breed of animal representing taxpayers, come into communities and effectively walk all over the board of assessors in other communities. Because they know how to intimidate people, the board members don't have the professional skills that Mr. McCarthy has, and I understand why Steve is frustrated. And that's why it's important for me to get back to you and to convey to the taxpayers the money that he personally
Yeah.
has
Yeah,
saved
I agree.
for the town of West Bridgewater.
But doing it so long, it just goes without, it's just another day, another dollar,
But
Absolutely.
people need to know, people need to know that.
Yeah, well, thanks, John, yeah,
You're
thanks.
right.
Thank
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you guys
It's
for
all,
coming
it's
in.
all in the rubric of
Think it out, yeah.
of transparency
Yes.
and public disclosure. And we want people to know the job that we're doing.
I was gonna try to be a dog catcher, I guess now I'll stay in the assessors after that, Dan.
Well, there you go.
We're tough on that budget, too.
Oh, Rick, I know you are.
Not to slight the other board members sitting behind me, because they engage and they participate, and they give Steve the latitude to express his experience to the people on the other side of the table.
Well, great.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
Have a good night.
you got it.
Thank you
guys.
very much.
Where are we? Should we call for a recess? Should we give it a minute?
Whoops, what do we got here? Ooh,
Do you know if anyone needed one?
Ours is the rest of it, Dave?
Nope, who's coming in next? The building inspector is
Went to
coming
get
in.
him.
That's it.
He was here and I think he left and
Yeah.
Yeah, when he saw that we had just
I had a
barely
touch
got
screen.
into it.
Yeah.
I could
Did you
Oh,
see me?
no.
That doesn't work.
Oh, did it go?
office
No, I was,
supplies,
I think I have a touch
Thanks.
screen. I'm used to my
I know.
my
same.
iPad.
To the Chromebook and all.
Well,
This
that's
is
why
like so
percentage
awkward for me. I don't know what to do.
bother me that
I
much.
don't even know where my mouse is.
Got my
So
daughter
if
one.
they had an
for
updated budget, I can
Santa
just
Day.
type those numbers in and it's gonna update it
Had
for
to let her
everybody.
at it though. I gotta figure out some parental controls before I do that.
Unless Linda has those,
There
they're
probably
probably
was.
locked.
She might have.
Foolish
one.
mama.
Oh, yep, it's locked.
All right, so.
All right, so if Linda puts in these numbers, that's where I was going.
Do you mind if or if David has a copy, I can make sure she gets it.
Yeah, thanks. I had a hard time with that, with the number of, saying that the number of cars was increasing over time.
It's
And that
going
they've
to
been
this year,
constantly
I know,
expanding.
but
It
But
really
these numbers
wasn't.
aren't showing that.
I think you both said it very nicely. You were like, if you can show us their numbers, it's one thing to have a $200,000 budget.
Yeah.
And bring in
Yeah.
500,000.
Yeah.
Compared to a
Yeah.
200 that brings in 65. And again,
Yeah.
if we knew it,
That's
it
what we
makes
need
it
to see.
easier to say, oh, I gotta grow. To your
Yes.
point,
Right.
get 2 new people, train them, keep up your things.
no one's gonna argue.
Understand it,
Yeah.
right?
Hot in here, what do you think we
How
just
they
did
do
to the
it.
last
It's so
guys?
Look at that. I guess
Well, there was a
nobody's allowed to
fire.
take any vacation in here,
Don't
right?
frighten them.
No
Don't
vacation for
frighten them.
you.
All right, how are you guys doing?
Hi, everybody.
Good to see you.
Hi.
All right, we are on budget 2410. Inspector, no new budget.
Handout.
Wow, 54% increase, is that
I
right?
think I got this. Oh, yeah, this is just,
I smiled at you way before I looked at this.
Am I reading that right?
An increase of
54%?
54%?
Did you guys get?
Yeah, but
I'll go this
percent.
way.
I don't think so.
So which one were we starting with?
top of
The building inspector one?
Yes, 2410. It looks like the
Alright.
first line, appointed official, went up 2%.
Yep, so that's just my salary, contractual increase 2%. Then the next line's the clerical salary, which I got the breakdown, a 2% contractual increase for Karen. Then we were requesting a 35-hour-a-week full-time clerk to assist in the office.
Oh, it's just adding one full-time person
Yep.
to the line. Okay.
35 hours.
Well,
So
I
how
think what
many-
the quickest way, let me blow through the whole thing, then we can
I ask,
talk.
How many people are in the clerical salaries? Just one?
Currently one, Karen.
So by adding one, it went up 68%? By adding another person?
I get, if that's what the Excel sheet says, that's what it is.
It's
Might wanna check the math.
$40,000 increase.
Yeah, that doesn't really.
That, no. Doesn't make sense.
Maybe the cell calculation's wrong, I don't know. The next line, I was looking for a part-time, 19-hour-a-week or less assistant local building inspector to help with inspections.
I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on clerical salaries. Can you talk about what you're trying to change in your department by adding another person?
Basically, I believe this is the third year we've been asking for help, and we've gained zero ground. Now it's no one except the office and the seniors that help us believe or realize that the building has continued, which if you look at the last page of that handout, although maybe the permit fees don't say it, the numbers of the dwellings and construction value fees have increased.
What if value fees increasing, what does that have to do with your workload?
It just, that's more work. I don't know, I guess everyone except the building department's under the impression we're in a downward spiral of new homes and 40Bs, that there's nothing being built in town and that we're in the office playing cards all day. It's the increase in the volume. You can see 2011, there was 5 new homes. Last year, we had 31, and it's either been in some kind of increase, most of the years an increase, or somewhat the same, or an increase above that.
You said you've presented this every year. Why do you keep coming back and asking for a full-time person when it's been denied every time? Wouldn't you come back and look for a half-time?
We
person?
did look for
Or-
half at one point, and it got denied. The problem, we're trying now, the stress levels are out of control in the office, and my fear, which I've had happen already once in my career, they blew off the request, and we could not handle what was going on. And we had, then when the contractors assaulted the town manager, basically, because we could not keep up. Time is money. The contractor can't wait days, weeks. They're on us if we're hours, like today. They've requested a foundation inspection, and they're going nuts. Where is he? But I'm tied up in meetings at trampoline parks. We're blowing 3-4 hours on other things, and I'm a one-man show. Karen can't go out and do inspections.
An inspection takes 3 or 4 hours?
At this trampoline park, it does. We were there for 3 hours yesterday, an hour and a half today. Complications with the design and
Trampoline park.
Go down the
Shine.
just problems in having to meet the architect and fire protection engineers to figure out what they gotta do to solve it so they can eventually open.
Shaws.
So, like, back to what I was saying, we're at the point, if nothing happens this year, it's just gonna explode. We're stressed out. I can't sleep at night because I'm flying.
Describe for me what what is it about the position? I'm sorry, I'm not trying to get anyone upset. I'm just trying to better understand if you're trying to, if you're saying that the number of transactions have increased or the number of inspections have increased. I'm trying to understand what part of your time
It's
has
across the
become too
board and
stretched.
everyone keeps year after year. I would need a full-time person to log every phone call, every building code question at the window, every permit I review.
I mean, there's no doubt the town is growing. There is a lot of growth going on, absolutely. I'm just trying to understand hours, we're not part of your department. I don't know what it is
Yeah.
when you go out and you do. I'm just trying to understand from a business point of view, if you currently have one person and you're gonna go to two people, what's gonna change? Is it that transactions or permits are gonna happen faster? Is it that you'll have time to get all of the inspections done that aren't currently being done?
Yeah.
What piece is falling through the cracks?
Well, I was looking, so last night they asked if I had the choice between the clerical help or the assistant inspector. The clerical help would be the quickest because I'm doing a lot of Karen's work. Letters, she's the phone and window and trying to keep up with, she's in charge with paying all the town hall bills. That pretty much is everything, and all the letters I type up, like when we do our annual inspections, there's a zillion letters for whatever we need for when there's an issue. I can't just verbally say it and there's nothing to back it up or they forget. What'd you say?
So you're doing a lot of that.
And the other, which we haven't gotten to it, I'm looking to try to get online permitting at some point, which twofold, it's going to help streamline a lot of the things we're doing and make the interdepartmental connections a lot better. And instead of me manually emailing historic or checking with taxes, this system will be tied into their databases and automatically take care of those things.
So would that make any of the process more efficient?
It definitely will, but there's a hitch with this is David Bentley. I think he's the electrical inspector, but right now the permits and fees for electrical, plumbing, and gas are handled by the clerk's office and the rest of it through us. So it's the split administrative duties
Isn't that to
between
keep
two.
the money out of?
No.
You guys don't handle money, do you?
So I think I explained it. It took me a couple years to figure out how this happened, and I believe it was when Steve Crawford was the building official here. He did not have a secretary, and I think it was somebody in the clerk's office that got tasked. She was part-time and was to be his part-time secretary, but he was only part-time. The office wasn't open, I think, full. This is way back. So when it wound up, when she wasn't in the building department, she was at the clerk, so they just went to the clerk to do the electrical and plumbing. And somehow, when she left, it just stuck that way,
'Cause
that's
I
the
could see
process.
keeping the money separate, because that's a segregation of duties. That's something you would do in a county.
So
anyway.
right now, the clerks are handling the money and the permit questions, and then after the fact, some of it comes to us. But if the online permitting would basically, I don't think the clerks are gonna be answering to try to figure out how they should be filling the permits out. It's gonna end up us because it's one system for building, plumbing, gas, and electric. It's gonna streamline a lot of things, but it's gonna add, now we're fielding more calls, more people at our window that aren't there now. More flow
I'm
of,
getting a little lost. What line item would that actually be impacting
I
then?
think he's talking 50.
office supplies, the last
Oh,
line.
office
So
supplies.
the $9,000
not the maintenance.
is to stand up a system to do online permitting.
We've had a presentation a few months ago with the town administrator and a few other departments to show the power of it.
Jerry says, is that a one-time expense?
The 10,000, then there's a annual maintenance fee of the next line up, 4160.
So could you explain the 5243, the one that says online annual maintenance?
Yeah, so that's the online maintenance, which
So it's
it's
10 grand a
upkeeping it.
program.
Actually, any changes we want to make, so it's a fully customizable, we literally can do anything you want.
Now, if have that, does that need, is there still a need to have someone at the window, or does this alleviate some of that?
It
pressure?
will, but the people that aren't tech savvy enough will more than likely have to enter that. But the one good thing, once somebody's registered, their info is automatic, so they just need their username, password, all their info. If they're a contractor, the licenses are automatically there, their insurance, and they just punch in the street address and what they're doing for the work, and it automates
Who would
it.
maintain this software package? Would it be your department?
The software vendor would do it.
That's good.
Would you get
Does
training?
the town have anybody who's equipped to review presentations like this? Because they're asking for $10,000 to purchase an online permitting system, plus a $4,000 roughly per year annual maintenance. And they're asking us to prove this. We don't know anything about this vendor or where they stand in the hierarchy of vendors who provide this service to municipalities. Shouldn't we know a little bit more about that before we just say, yeah, that sounds good?
Well, we're not really here to manage
Yeah.
other departments.
Yeah.
I actually did.
Also, in the say yes or no, because we don't know.
Oh, she's on the phone.
Oh, I'm sorry, I should have announced
I
that.
thought
when
it was
came
on.
on.
I didn't know if it was the
I
laptop.
keep
I'm like,
forgetting.
where
No,
is it?
She's right there.
We keep Jerry under the table.
How did you fit in there?
Sorry, Jerry, I should have announced you when they walked in.
I actually did vet out about 5 of the top software vendors for building department. Actually, since I've last dealt with this company, it used to be individual modules, so you could buy a module for the building department, one for the town clerk for their licenses and dump stickers, one for conservation if they wanted it, zoning board, planning board, the selectmen licensing. Now, the whole package is there, so if we buy it, and then you just activate, obviously there's a fee, but it's less because they combine the suite as one, and you say, I want the selectmen's licensing module, and they just activate it.
Now, what if you put in this software across the multiple departments? Would it still
It-
cost this much?
It would be a little, and it's based each one, so mine's based on the parcels of land in town, because that would gauge how much building can
So
happen,
this
and the permit
particular
number.
package, will it talk to the other
Yeah.
licensing, and it's part of the same package?
Yeah.
They'll speak to each other
It all
without
s-
buying the same exact?
Exactly. So all of it, that's the other benefit. It would whatever ones you wanted to activate would communicate the same.
It's all integrated.
The other bonus, it would be the same.
The
with-
town clerk has now will tie right into this.
I'm not sure what they're doing. I don't.
Oh, so
They
you're
ma-
saying they would have to upgrade and change their
They would just
software.
activate it, and there would be some kind of fee, but it's all based on what you're doing. Do you want the marriage licenses, the death certificates, or do you just want dump stickers and whatever? It's based on the volume of
So it sounds
permits
like the one you're
issued.
looking at is one that would be excellent across the town, but you're just looking to use it just for your
Yeah.
department for now. I wonder what the cost differences would be if more than one department were to get onto it. Or are there other departments not willing to use this software package because the one they have already works, and if it's not broke, don't fix it?
I'm not sure that anybody has. Do we, David, have online permitting where you can actually pull it? I think you can
'Cause this
maybe
might be more
pay.
of a conceptual or even capital item to make it work between different departments.
Yeah, so I'm just asking for us, so that would be up to them, and they'd have to, like I said, I don't know.
But it's a lot of money to spend if it's only your department that's gonna use it. That's where I'm going.
So typically in most towns, is that one department, and Mike's department is the largest one that would be using this, is that they would have their base module, use it, determine as to whether or not we like it or not, because everybody else will have sign-offs, myself included. And then, over time, you would then add modules to it, Board of Health, Town Clerk, whatever
Yeah.
the case might be, if they want to do online dog licenses, for example. And then
What
there
dump
would be-
stick is.
And then there would be smaller fees for that. So truthfully, if we had a full-time IT person, this person would do that entire, but we don't.
Yeah.
So a lot of times in smaller towns, this is exactly how we do
Yeah.
it. Is that you start with one department, and you get a couple of things from that. One, it doesn't cost you as much upfront, and two, is you're able to vet the system.
Yeah.
So that way, over, say, a year from now, we realize we don't like this. Granted, we can change to a different vendor or whatever, or we can add modules to it. But you're not gonna know until you use it.
Yeah. So,
We sat, I'm sorry, Mike, we sat there all collectively, and we went through the process. And, you know, it's a nice system, but for me to sit there and say that I know it's better than somebody else's system, I
Yeah.
can't tell you that.
so on my end, sorry,
As Mike said, he looked at 4 or 5 different ones. After he looked at those, he then brought them to all of us, because he thought this one was the best. And then we sat there collectively and looked at it, and from everything that we saw, it looked good.
yeah. So where my previous employment, we actually had it, I think I was able to get that 10 or 12 years ago. I was actually one of the first on the South Shore to have it. So I started with them, and I'm open-minded, so I went, there's a lot, now has become more prevalent, and checked some of the other major ones and did demos and had them come out and go through it, and still thought that this particular one from Full Circle was still the best. But the 10 years ago or 12 years ago, I probably vetted it more than an IT guy would have. All the communities that had it, which most of them were in the cities, I took multiple trips, and instead of just letting them do their dog and pony show, I went, all right, town manager IT, we're going to Marshfield. You talk to your counterparts about it. I'm going to talk to mine. The next one, electrical and plumbing and gas, we're going to wherever, Hanson. And we talk, no negative feedback. We wound up getting it. Then a few years later, other towns around here called me, and they came and talked to me, and I suggested to do the same, to go to some of the other communities and get different viewpoints. So Middleborough
So you've used.
wound up, Hanson, Whitman, Easton, and Bridgewater have the entire suite. Within the last 2 years, they bought all the activated all the modules.
Really? So you've used this in
Yes.
other towns? Okay, so you like it. So
Yep.
what kind of efficiencies are you gonna get? So you're asking for another clerk and a part-time assistant inspector and a new system that's supposed to increase your efficiency. That's a lot, right?
Yeah.
So do you really need all that if you're gonna implement a system like this? Do you really need the clerk and the other assistant?
At a minimum, the clerk, no matter what, just our volume and what I'm doing for clerk work, and can't get to, I have no time to do what I call administrative work outside of reviewing permits.
So does this system help you with the letters? Does this system help you with anything else, or just permits?
So it's not going to help with the letters, because that's Microsoft Word or Excel or something. But what it will do, there's a lot which, first off, won't be taken in paper anymore. Everything will be electronic. So this would be a step in all of our files and plans being electronic. Right now, when I started, which I had last night, I had no clue there was a historic thing, and there was a small barn on East Center Street that I issued a demo permit, and Jim Benson got all upset with me, and I'm like, I didn't know, and I'm like, is there a list? And he's like, yeah, and I'm like, can we have it? I don't know that there was any procedure, so that we cured that, and I said every time now, from now on, the bylaws, anything built before 1930, they may want to review. So that's my first thing. I go onto the online assessors database to whatever the permit is it 1930 or not, and I actually print that out. If it's not, I write no historic review and highlight the year it was built and keep it with the application. If it is historic, I scanned an email to Dave Beavis, whatever the date was and whatever the time, waiting for his response. Then I proceed with my normal keep going through. So
So you're saying this system would help you with that historic?
Yeah, so the main thing is the assessors database is how, when they start typing whatever the address, it'll chisel it and pick, all right, you're at 2 East Street, just, it'll pull from the assessor. So what we can do is it can link to them, so if they have a database of the historic homes, or just, they do have what I call the super critical list of really high alert properties that they want to be known about. So we could have that as one, and then anything built before 1930 would automatically come up. This may require, or does, if it's on the critical list, it needs the review. And then, right now, on a lot of things, I have to email down to the treasurer, because I don't remember what Mass General Law the town adopted, if they owe taxes of any sort back due, not you're late on a quarter, you're back in arrears by whatever he says.
So it's
No permits are issued, so I have to email him, wait for him.
So are you saying this system will help you with all that? You
So,
don't have to do so many
He can
emails?
do the same. If it's an Excel sheet with 10 people that aren't current, it'll read it. Nope, they have to clear up their tax, and it won't let you go forward.
So Jan asked a question, I'm sorry, I know you're talking, but I didn't hear an answer. Jan asked the question, is if this system they're proposing is currently tied into the assessors and can pull all that information? Is that what you're saying? Because I'm not, I think that's the question you asked, Jan.
Yeah, I'm asking if this system, if we implemented this system, if it would alleviate some of the administrative burdens that you're facing in
will.
terms of letters and emails and things like that.
It's going to, some of it, it's going to alleviate and streamline it and put solid checks that if, oh, I forgot to check the date, whatever.
Yeah.
There's so many checks and balances that I'm doing manually that this
Right.
can do. But
So-
on the other side, because plumbing, gas, and electric, people to the window and calls that we're not taking now, that the clerk's handling, we're gonna have even more contractors and people calling and whatever, I need help filling this out, us at the window helping them. It's twofold. It's gonna alleviate no more paper storage, the historic check, people that owe taxes, the money, it actually reads, automatically checks the licenses, which that's another thing. I manually got to go to the databases, check the licenses if they're valid.
Sounds like it's very labor intensive.
Yeah.
So getting this system is going to save you time? Is that the
On
consensus?
some of the like I just said, some of the processes, but if,
Well, you're asking for a lot of things coming in here. You're asking for
Yeah.
a part-time person, you're asking for a full-time person, and you're asking for a new software package.
Yeah.
If you only get one of those, which one is it?
good question. I'd have to say clerical. The reason I'm asking for so much is because this is the third, every year we haven't gained any ground, so if we got a little bit, I'd be asking for a little bit, but we're at the breaking point. And I don't know, like I said, my fear, I know my department, I know how to run it inside and out. We've streamlined all that can be streamlined. We've driven the seniors as far as they can. They shouldn't even be, to me, they shouldn't be trying to run the department. They're just there to be a face if there's absolutely no one there.
Can I say something, Maria?
Sure.
I've been here, doing this volunteer for 15 years, and plus the senior program, and I could see the big difference in the building department. You need help there. The phone's ringing, you gotta answer all these questions, people at the window, they want this, they want that. I mean, it's impossible, it really is. And as I say, and then at the senior program now, they cut it down so Karen won't have as many people to help her out. Okay, she got hurt. I couldn't help Mike as much, an older lady trying to help Mike as much. Now, what if something happens to Mike? Who's gonna run this department? Karen was out, suppose they got in a car wreck. Who's gonna run this department? You have nobody, no clue how to run this department. And
That's the other thing. Karen just hit her 25-year
Yes.
mark. She's probably, actually, if be stunned after this
Yeah.
fall that she doesn't call it quits.
Yeah, you don't know, so who's gonna try, and it is a lot.
It's a complicated, it's not, hey, you, come in and answer the phones. It will take years for someone.
It's a lot.
to learn
of
everything.
work in this department, and nobody has a clue.
Yes.
I do.
Are we not, are we wrapping up? Because it's anecdotal and it's, you know, we don't get as far as anecdotal stuff. So because, you know, I just hate to see the discussion go so far off the track.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Does anyone have any other specific questions to this budget? All right, hearing none, let's jump to 2420, the gas and plumbing.
So the top line's just looking for a 2% increase over his stipend that he currently gets.
Wait a minute, you're looking for an 18% increase on this budget as well? Okay, I just want to make sure I'm looking at the right thing. Is that what you guys have?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
The next line, I've got the assistant inspector. Right now, I polled a bunch of the communities, and the average is about 2,500 for the. This is for if David's out sick, vacation, or unavailable to cover the office, and/or the biggest thing is after our emergency calls. I'm not talking 15 past 4 in the afternoon. I'm talking midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m.
There's a lot of emergency calls?
3 a.m. Actually, I will guarantee if you tallied it, responds more than the fire chief, because almost if it's a fire, a flood, something down on a house, the power is typically getting cut, or it's the power that got
You're
ripped
getting
off the house.
That many emergency calls in the middle of the night? How many times middle of the night in the past year did you have to go out?
More than a dozen. Within a year, at least.
So the backup person, $400 if he takes 2 weeks vacation and then there's 12 calls at midnight. Who would want to get ripped out of bed and respond to a fire at Chili's?
Okay. So what's your reason for the $100 in office supplies? Well, since we're asking.
More business.
That was just that the line gets cut thin every year, and they had code books. So typically 3 years, there's new code books, which we don't float that every year. It's the year, like next year, I'm gonna have like $300 to $3,500 worth of new code books to buy.
No, those, if you got that software, are those online or part of that software?
No, the code books are separate that we need to review when we're reviewing the code. They're huge, they're like 8 inches thick.
We have one at my house.
All right. Does anyone have any other questions on the Inspector of Gas and Plumbing budget? All right. Hearing none, let's move on to 2450, Electrical Inspector.
It's basically identical, the exact same that I just said. Those two are
Glad
exact.
you warned me before I got to it. 17%. Okay.
The only thing, if you'll notice, the only difference is this intermittent calls, which is the actual inspector getting called out in the middle of the night. David has $200 for the entire year if he gets called out 12 times at 2 o'clock in the morning. So he's got 200. I'm trying to increase it to 1,000, so 802 is the 1,000. Currently, John Cruz has 0, so I was asking for 1,000 in his when he gets called out, because he gets nothing if he responds in the middle of the night.
Okay. Any other questions on this budget? All right. Let's jump down to 1940 Town Hall.
To expedite it, basically all the top 3 on that are.
0.76%, just pointing it out.
The first 3 are just contractual increases for Burgess Pest, the fire extinguisher company, and the security alarm. Number 4, I was requesting 1,600. We're trying to get funds for these mini split units that one was recently installed in the fall in here for biannual maintenance to these units. Currently, there's no funds to maintain them. And a lot of the ones that died, it was because there was no maintenance.
I never knew you were supposed to maintain those. I thought, oh,
So these newer ones are capable of cooling and heat, so I would want them to come right before cooling season and clean everything, make sure the condensers and everything are ready to go. And then again in the fall, before someone used it for the supplemental heat, again, clean it after it went the whole summer running.
you learn something new every day. I'm not the only one, right?
And
No.
The only cleaning I do is from a stepladder, you know?
Right.
And the rest of the page is just contractual increases again, the generator, elevator, sprinkler system, and that's it.
All right. Anybody have any specific questions on this budget?
Nope.
All right. Well, thank you guys for coming in.
Thanks.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome. Anytime. Thank you for volunteering. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we're so off time. We are up to Mr. Sorrow. You're always gonna be Mr. I say this every year. He's always Mr. Sorrow to me. Budget 1550, data processing.
Okay, just going down the list, I had put in for 3% for myself, which I usually get every year. Office equipment and maintenance kept same with the engineering. Data processing services went up, basically on the KVS, on their request, their bill. Tech consultants have went up also. We had an increase from Hub. They didn't take an increase for a couple of years. They did this year, but they've also increased their service, so we're actually getting a better bang for our buck with what we're doing right now.
We seem to have good technology here.
Yeah.
I've been happy with it.
I can't complain. I really can't. Just like what you guys are using right now.
Look at us now.
It's worked out good. It's been fine. We also have had some equipment that we were paying service contracts on that we've eliminated. But also, the phone system came back for, because originally when they bought the phone system, they bought the longest service plan that they could get. This year, it came due, which is like $10,000. Oh, it's 5 years, just going into the
For
fifth
the
year.
phones?
Yeah,
5 years since we bought those?
yeah,
Holy cow, that went fast.
yeah.
Okay.
So that accounts basically for that. And also, we've had an increase. I've increased the bandwidth over to the water department for the GIS service, and which has really worked out well. So there's been an increase there. And for computer equipment, I went from $4,250 to $5,000. Just $4,250 doesn't buy what it used to, you know.
No kidding.
You buy
True about
a little
everything,
mini
right.
desktop, which is this big, is $800. The laptops are $1,100. So stuff's got expensive. So that's it, really.
Okay.
Well, geez, we made you wait all that time.
No, I went to Dunkin' Donuts with Kenny.
Well, then I don't feel bad
I met
now.
Kenny in the elevator.
Jeez, we intimidated everybody that came in before you, too. We scared them all.
You know what you're doing.
I noticed you didn't bring a coffee for everyone.
No, wait a minute, you saw us sitting here. No, that
There's
was
some of
great.
these things in the data where you have a lot of different contracts. Do we have the ability of possibly like pooling some together to kind of get scale? So like if the department, that department, and you get more, you actually sometimes will get a decrease. Have we ever even looked into something like that?
I don't follow you on that.
So I heard you said a contract, the phones are up 5 years, now we're going up, it's a big increase. Well, next time it's gonna be, your broadband's gonna go up, and then these things are gonna get cheaper. But if we buy more, sometimes you get a scale. I didn't know if we had like.
Everything's different, though.
Department, like, you know, the. keep it up.
Everything's based on the vendor.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And we're getting more and more vendors, that's what I'm kinda, I've
Correct,
heard it for
but
the
they all
building.
do different things, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like ShoreTel was our phone system, and then that's been bought out by SpectraTel, but they won't do anything with anything else.
Right.
Even with Hub, I mean, they handle the network, but they don't, they just pass on to us whatever the renewals are for certain pieces of equipment.
Right.
Like last year, we bought a new firewall, 3-year warranty, so we won't have to worry about that for a few years.
Right.
The new equipment that we put in to replace all the network stuff, all the servers and storage, That's got a 3-year service plan on it. So when that comes due, that's, it's getting them in cycle, you know what I mean?
I'm trying to remember if this covers the schools too, or this is
It covers
just
the whole
town.
town. The phone system?
I mean,
Oh,
the phones,
oh.
the internet, all that stuff.
Well,
The
there's 3
expense,
lines.
yeah.
There are 3 lines that we share. There's tech consultants, the 5309, 5326, and 5327. Those 3 are shared by the entire town. 55% is paid by the school department, 40% is police, fire, and the town hall, highway, and so forth, and the water department is 5%. So there's a sheet in there that has
Yeah, there's
everything
usually
broken
a
out.
handout
Yeah.
each year.
Yeah, that's how that works.
Thank you.
And it's worked out well.
I was trying to remember from last year.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, that's the way we do that.
All right, does anyone have any other questions for Mr. Sorrow? Sorry, Ed Sorrow.
You get it.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you
Have a
very
good one.
much.
For the wait.
No, it's not a
Hope you
problem.
enjoyed your coffee.
I did. Take care.
See you. Solid. I'll talk. Good evening.
Mr. Kenny May, Chief Kenny
Yeah,
May,
that's
sorry.
fine, no, Kenny's
Oh, and
fine.
everybody, all sorts of
Perfectly
names
fine.
tonight. Yeesh. Still with us, Jerry? Just letting everybody know.
Oh,
Jerry's on
she's
speaker.
on,
Yeah, she'll rub in
remotely?
that
Nicer
she's in,
places.
she's in Florida. Yeah.
well, it's nice weather here, so I'm not complaining. Going down,
Budget 2,200?
going down the list, is contractual from,
Oh, wait, I gotta look at the first thing
Yep.
first. What's the, 3.32.
that's the contractual raise.
That's overall budget increase of 3.32. That's the most
3.30 is the
That's the nicest number we've seen.
seen tonight, yeah.
clerical, that's the same thing, as contractual. Permanent salaries is contractual with I have 5 step increases, that's why it's a little higher.
Okay.
The next one's the overtime, it's all reflected of a 2% raise that we were projecting for the unions, which is time and a half, will be covering for the overtime. Sick time, I just kept the same, actually went down a little bit, because I really just don't have a sick time issue with my department, so
That's a
I
wonderful
did
thing.
not increase any on that line item.
Now, why is your department different? How did you do that? Well, it seems like that's been an issue in the past,
They've
that
been,
line.
my guys are great, so I can't complain that they're.
Oh, good. That's fantastic.
Everybody likes to come to work.
And everybody likes to come to work, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
What's the vacation coverage?
That's, we cover man for man, so that's, if somebody's off, it gets covered with overtime. That's all of our time, because we have 4 guys a shift, and we maintain 4 guys a shift all the time.
So you expect that overtime to go up?
Yeah, because with that one there is because we had guys that reached from 2 to 3 weeks vacation, 3 to 4 weeks vacation, they reach their milestones of vacations, so.
Oh, I see.
That's basically, everybody knows how much time, and I
So
basically take how many hours of overtime they get by an
Yes.
average overtime rate.
it's up to 162,000. Is it better to hire another guy at this point, or instead
Well,
of
you'd have to hire a lot of guys to cover that.
a lot of guys?
You'd have to maintain, and actually 4 guys a shift is not enough, that we should have, maintaining at least 5, not 6, being as understaffed as we are. So paying overtime is a lot cheaper than paying a salary, because your salaries, benefits.
Okay.
And then, of course, we have 4 guys, guys are coming back all the time on their time off to maintain our apparatus. You know, we're so busy now, and there were 2 ambulances running all the time. It's crazy, we're
A lot of
staffing is way
fires, a lot of
down.
accidents.
We have everything.
Car accidents.
Yeah,
All
that's
accidents.
always on the
We're on
move.
24 constantly, we have
Oh, yeah.
medicals going,
That Route
Constantly,
24 keep
yeah.
you busy.
I've heard what friends call 911 for.
Yeah.
Like, just things that I would never think of calling 911 for. You go to the hospital.
yeah,
And
I've never called 911.
yeah. Hope you never have.
pray it never happens.
Oh, actually, we did once. It was having an asthma attack.
So that's same as all, the same with the personal time, it's what our costs are. Longevity, there's contractual increases on longevities. Firefighters have reached their milestones where they're getting longevity. And then the only other increase is down below is dues and meetings, just the cost of all the associations that we belong to, the dues have all increased. Giving a total raise of 3.3%.
Okey-dokey.
That's pretty straightforward. Does anyone have any questions for the chief?
This is the best budget.
I know, we want to hug you after the ones we had earlier tonight.
We can make it more difficult.
Are there needs that you need?
Yeah,
Right.
well, staffing is our biggest need we have, and at some point, we have
Most
to
expensive.
address that.
Yeah.
There's
Didn't you recently
opportunities.
post on the hub about a need
Yeah,
for?
this is out there as needs, and David and I have been talking about that levels and different options that we have.
It's not the same post where there was something about us
Somebody's
denying
complain.
it.
No.
Okay.
Well, who knows what they put on there? I honestly don't do much on that. I don't even know
Better off,
how
I
to.
try not to,
I am
too.
not a social media guru, but we've discussed, David and I have different options. If there's grants available, but there'd be a commitment from the town to do.
Like a matching thing? Is that what
It's
you're-
the grants that we can get would be, it's a 3-year grant where the town picks up 25% of salary and benefits, and the grant pays for 75% of salary and benefits of the first 2 years. The third year, the town picks up 75% of salary and benefits, and then the fourth year that the town they would own the whole thing. But it's a commitment involved.
It's a great
They
way to
have to commit.
transition
Yeah.
the size of your force without having to
is.
come in
It
and
is,
ask for
yeah.
a full employee.
So that's the point where I gotta talk to the selectmen and get everybody's approval
Yeah,
to
that's a
write the
great way.
grant, and then we'd go from there.
Now, who would write it?
Oh, we do. That's-
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
No, that's all through us. We do.
Oh, nice.
It's do- it is actually coming up for opening.
Even finding out about these
Yeah.
grants is
So
fantastic.
that's
It's a lot of research.
something
It
we've
is.
discussed. David and I have been talking about it, and we just gotta take it next level to get everybody on board. Because you have to, before you can apply for it, you have to have the selectmen's approval to go forward with it.
Oh, you do?
Because there is a
Yeah,
commitment.
because, they're
Oh,
not
they
gonna
have to
give it to
commit.
it all of a sudden, they say, hey, no, Middleborough had a problem, is they got awarded it, and then at last minute, town didn't wanna do it.
Oh,
Yeah, so, and it was a large amount of guys, yes. But I have all the figures, what it would cost and everything else, so like I said, that'd be the next discussion with David and
Great.
I, to go try to move forward with it.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's a good plan. What other things do you see your department needing in the next year versus the next 5 years?
Well, next year, well, our equipment is getting old. I know, I wonder about, vehicles, I think this year here, we need to replace, I do not have a truck besides the one that I drive. And I have an old cruiser I'm gonna replace, that's on capital. This ambulance is probably gonna have to replace next year.
Ooh, that's a big
And all that
chunk
stuff.
of money.
And then I have a 27-year-old fire engine that is gonna need to be replaced.
Oh, wow.
So over the next couple of years, the equipment is getting very aged. We have to seriously look at it. We're gonna try to write a grant for an engine, see if we can get that through. But, we try it, and if we wanna try that alternative before we decide we wanna spend $700,000 a year.
Absolutely, yeah, thank you for doing that.
So, but the ambulances become, because it's getting up there, and they run constantly.
Oh, gosh, yeah, they're always on
And
the road.
they bring in a lot of funding too, so.
Well,
they're
and
running
also
about
making sure people get the
Yeah,
service
they
they
collect,
need.
and I'm into about 700,000 a year that are coming in on ambulance revenues now.
Really?
Yeah.
I live on 106 and I see it going by
Yeah,
all the
we're
time.
very busy.
Yeah.
Both our ambulances going constantly.
Are you able to split chief ambulance versus fire calls?
Can I?
Or are they, yeah?
No.
Or are they all
No.
mixed?
I can separate them through our computer, they can
Just
have
curious how
breakdown.
many are strictly fire calls and how
Yeah,
many are
probably, it's
medical?
probably 75% medical calls now compared to fire calls.
Wow.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So, but like I said, we're a busy little
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
And honestly, the guys, they're wearing out.
All right, does anyone have any other specific questions on this budget? All right, hearing none, I think you're all set.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, chief.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry to keep you waiting.
Thank you for your patience.
We're back ahead of
Oh, are
schedule
we?
now.
Back on
It's Mark,
schedule.
right? Yes. How are you, Mark?
Through the fire department that fast.
I don't think we've ever, in 12 years, I don't know if we've
Been a
ever gotten
year
to fire
already.
department.
Already? Time flies when you're having fun.
You had more hair left.
Yeah, a lot more.
Only Mo could say that.
I was gonna say, you can get away with that, Mo.
Yeah, I couldn't.
Does everyone have a copy of the budget, or?
I think we do.
Not a pretty colorful one, do I?
Not
Ours isn't as
color,
pretty, but we have it.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want another copy? or
No,
you're
no,
good?
no,
All right,
no.
perfect,
No.
okay, awesome. So again, my name is Mark Morris, School Business Administrator, Southeastern Regional. Thank you for having me again this year.
Oops, and we're budget number, I'm sorry, I flipped that.
3,200.
Thank you.
It's going down.
I was gonna, yeah, I'll give you my number. It's, we're down 8.2%, so I know you said the, get a little bit better, right?
We had somebody
Well, we'll
graduate.
go into that. But I know that's what you like to look at first, the percentage, so that's what we're.
Down, negative,
Down.
8%?
No, the night gets better.
Yeah. Give me some lipstick.
So if you don't mind, I'm actually gonna start with the last page tonight.
Okay.
If that's okay with you. Perfect.
You've got my attention.
What's the last page here?
So this is actually the Town of West Bridgewater's FY '21 Chapter 70 summary.
Oh, okay.
So I just want to start with saying that I'm sure you've heard from, the Student Opportunity Act this year was put into place by the governor's office and across the state of Massachusetts. Good news, there's a lot of funding coming in for education over a 7-year period. As you can see here in this chart, the town of West Bridgewater will be receiving $703,360 of new foundation budget money. I guess you could say the bad news is $533,000 is coming from the community, from the state, and $148,000 coming from the state. That being said, the growth, the municipal growth rate factor for the town of Bridgewater is over 5%. So good news is, if you own a house or property here in the town, your values are going up. Things are going well. Tax returns are good in the town. People are working. So all those factors are good. When the state looks at that, then they say, the town can afford more of the burden than the state does. So that's where you see the discrepancy there, 533 from the town and 148 from the state. So I just wanted to open with that, just so you know
Did that go down or up?
that's actually up. So that amount, the amount of 533,000 has gone up for the town. But again, that has a lot to do with the Student Opportunity Act. So they've funneled a lot of money into education this year and over the
Right,
next 7 years. So, but that money, unfortunately, the majority of that's going to come from the town.
Yeah.
The town coffers. So that, I just want to open up with
That's
that,
what
just so
we
you
saw.
know. And you're going to see that across the state. You're going to see that. So, actually, I just wanted to point that out just as opening remarks, just so when we go through the budget, you kind of have a reference of where this is coming from and where it's driven from. So back to the first page. So we can see that the town's decreased, like I said, roughly 8.9%, if you round it off, 9%, $49,590 decrease for the town. The enrollment at Southeastern Regional has gone down from 50 to 42 students, so down 8 students. And in the town of West Bridgewater, looks like you've picked up enrollment from 1,076 to 1,071. So it looks like you actually increased about 31 students overall for the town. So that's good news. Right here at the very bottom of the
Block underneath, yeah.
Gotcha, okay.
Okay.
And if you look at right in the middle of the page, the factors affecting the assessment, as I mentioned, the growth rate factor 5.04, that's one of the main factors of why you're seeing a lot of the increase in the assessments as well. Because again, the town's doing well overall financially.
Yeah.
Any questions there on that page that I could
Lot
answer?
to-
Or if you want, I can kind of go through it, then we can go
Been
back.
drinking coffee in the morning. looking at these.
If there are no questions, I'll move on to the next page.
Is this saying the per pupil increase is 33% in West Bridgewater?
So the per pupil increase, correct, 33%.
So we're spending 33% more than you guys
So your
are?
increase has gone, no, this is just in the town, so your increase has gone up, looks like $455 increase overall, dollar-wise. You went from 11,328 to 11,783
That's what we're spending per.
per pupil,
student.
correct.
Per student
Per
that
student.
goes to
In the,
this
no, in the
school?
town of
West
West Bridgewater.
Oh, in the
In
town.
our school, the
It's
actual cost has
13,000.
gone up from 11,979 to 13,079.
Wow, so it costs more to educate,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
it costs more
Especially
per
go into
pupil.
that-
At a regional school, correct. When you take into consideration the actual equipment that are used in the shop areas and things of that nature, so the cost is higher, correct.
And I'm sure the assessment with the drop of number of pupils probably helped that.
Correct, and you'll see that as we go forward,
Exactly,
correct,
yeah.
yeah. So one of the major factors in the formula, obviously, is the number of students. That's one of the major variables, correct.
That's what we're paying. So 13,000 is what it costs per student at Southeastern?
Yeah.
In West Bridgewater, it's 11,782.
Now,
So,
special
and overall,
education in there too?
Correct.
So that's a huge.
That's what they're spending for
So
Southeastern.
we're sending
That's what we're
42
spending.
kids from West Bridgewater to your school.
Correct. Down 8 students from the prior year,
Got it.
50. So overall, what we're trying to say is.
But the
the
cost per student went up.
Correct. So if you look here at the 31% enrollment, we've had a 31% enrollment increase from 2015 with an 11% increase in per pupil costs. And the town's had an 8.1% increase with a 33% increase in costs from 2015 through 2020. That's the comparison there in that last chart.
I'm
you
sorry, I'm
have
not sure I said this. Jerry is on
Oh, sure, I'm sorry.
speakerphone, just so that you know
Okay,
as
do
well.
you want me to leave a copy for her of the, of when she comes back, or if you want us?
Oh, Jerry
Oh,
has one.
perfect.
Jerry, you're with us still, right?
I'm listening.
Okay.
I'm taking notes.
Thank you.
Do you deal with special education issues with your school, like West?
When you say
Bridgewater?
issues, what do you,
Well,
what's an
students
issue
that
per
you have, I
se?
know you're not busing people out to different places, I don't think.
Sometimes we have to, so it depends on the needs. So our enrollment is a blind enrollment process.
Right.
So we don't know what needs the students actually have until they've been accepted.
All right.
Then once they've been, for instance, this year, we have a couple of students that have visual impairment.
Okay.
So we have to have one-on-one aids with them at all times. But again, we don't know that until they've been accepted.
Okay.
So we don't make decisions based on that.
Right.
But once they're accepted, then we find out what their needs are, and we address those needs.
Is
But there
there-
are times that we have to ship them out to special circumstances. If they need special education or some type of need that we can't offer them at the school, we have to send them out or send someone into the school to provide what they need.
Right.
Correct, yeah, and unfortunately,
Yeah, I mean,
so that
it's
could
such a
be,
big part
it
of
could be a
our
budget
budget.
breaker, right? Because
Yeah.
you don't know until they've been accepted. So again, we're building this budget today, and we don't know the needs of the students until, late June, early July,
Right.
and to find out what they are. So on the second page is our FY '21 budget. Again, it has not been approved by the school committee yet. We actually have a school committee meeting next week. So there's a possibility by then it may be approved, or hopefully by the end of the month it'll be approved. And you can see our total budget overall is up 7.7% from last year.
What's driving that, would you say?
So as we go through, again, the student
Yeah, oh, yeah,
in the Student Opportunity Act, again, as we said, Southeastern Regional is a school that's at minimum spending requirements, net school spending requirements. So if you want to skip ahead, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages to the bar graph that looks like this.
Yep.
You can see that that solid blue line is what we spend per year, and the dotted line is what we're required to spend, the net school spending requirement. And you can see that one line overlaps the other.
The same.
So we're exactly at what the state says we need to spend. And again, we take that very seriously when we're building our budget. We look at those numbers, because again, we never want to have to come into a town or community and say, we need X above
Right.
what's actually needed. Because we know that the town's got their issues with their budget, everyone has their issues. So we do take that into consideration, and we try to, stay, and you can see since '06, '05, we've been there. Since '93, there've been a few years we've been a little bit above, but even with the Student Opportunity Act now, they've increased those amounts that we need to spend now, because again, they're flushing new money into the system, again, to educate the students over the next 7 years, so those requirements have become higher. But again, we're still at the required net school spending.
Okay.
So what does that mean for the town of West Bridgewater? So on the third page, the district budget, at the very last line, West Bridgewater, only because alphabetically, decrease of $49,590 with an assessment of $549,335 for FY '21.
So it went down.
So it went down from $598,925
There's less students.
Yeah.
with 8 less
Went down
students.
to 8.
Correct.
8 less.
So, and I need to say, your enrollment also increased in the town, so that plays a factor as well. So with your enrollment increasing, ours decreasing, it helps mitigate that delta. For instance, if your enrollment in town was going down as well as with ours going down, that delta might have been bigger, because now the state says there's less students overall to educate, so they're gonna give less money. But the good news is your enrollment went up, so that helps offset some of that delta. So you would get some funds from the state, obviously, to help with those new students that you have.
Okay.
On the next page, it just highlights, a 7.7% increase. And again, in your question, what's driving that? So our operating budget is up 7.9%. So our enrollment overall at Southeastern was down for the year, so our operating budget, but requirements now by the Student Opportunity Act have increased roughly 7.9%. Our contractual increase to teachers and staff were 2%.
Okay.
The required contributions, again, what the state says that the towns can afford, is up 9.8%. So again, as we know, the economy's well, everyone's working, everything, house property values are going up. So the state's obviously saying, everything's good in the towns and the city, that they can afford to pay more of the burden than they have in the past. And just keep in mind, this information comes from 2 years of tax returns, so the prior 2 years. So you'll be seeing these increases with town value and wealth over the next couple of years at least, because the economy's been doing well. Where we do have some control is over transportation. And you can see we've actually decreased it 21.4%, regional school transportation.
And that's the only time I remember you coming in here and it looking like you needed more money than the minimum. The only time I remember you guys needing money was when it was related to transportation.
Well, what happens is, and I say this every year, when you see your senators, your congressmen, your representatives, let them know that state is supposed to fund regional transportation at 100%. Unfortunately, they don't. They have that little caveat in there, only when the funds are available will they fund it, but they've never funded it at 100%. This past year, though, being a good year, we were a little over 75%, which was more than what was expected, and that's one of the reasons why you're seeing some of that decrease. So we actually received more. And when we do receive more, that goes right back to the towns and the communities, because again, it's in regional transportation. So that helped decrease that there a little bit. And we actually got some new software for transportation, and we were actually able to consolidate some runs. And some of the different areas that the students were in, we were actually able to consolidate as well, to kind of utilize that and be more efficient with some of our bus runs. So that being said, we were able to cut 21.4%.
You have your own buses?
We own all our own buses, correct. And unfortunately, we can't charge for regional transportation because the state is supposed to fund it at 100%. So we can't charge the students for transportation.
Supposedly,
The next page is just to show that the cost to educate a student, whether it's from Brockton, West Bridgewater, Easton, Foxborough, is the same across the board. The only difference is the amount you get from the state, which is that blue piece of the pie there. So, I'm sorry, the red, the state is the red, the 8. So the actual cost for every student is the same. Some people say, well, why does Brockton pay less than Foxborough or West Bridgewater? That's because the state pays more in those towns. And obviously they're saying that the city's not as economically strong or financially strong, and property values aren't as high, so that they can't afford as much. So obviously they pay less and the state pays more. And you see that across all the towns and the communities we service. But the total cost to educate a student is the same across the board.
The same.
Yeah, if you add those two, the blue and the red for each one, they all come out to the same. The total amount's the same. This is the bar graph that we just went over for ours. Then there's one also for the town of West Bridgewater, just for reference purposes. And this is just a little bit of the equalized value on that next page and the property growth information that they have for the town of West Bridgewater. And this is all on the Department of Ed's website. So all this information is public, you can get that all there on their website, and that's where we've gotten this information from.
Lots of good stuff.
Yeah, and then the next page just kind of shows that the increase in enrollment in the town and the decrease at Southeastern, and your overall increase state aid. So I don't want to bore you with too much of this, but again, if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them, or if anything you want me to go over
No.
again or reiterate. I can
Good
definitely
information to have.
Go over.
Nope.
All right. Does anyone have any questions on that budget? It went down. I think we're happy. All right, I think that's it for you today.
Great, perfect, thank you.
Thank you so
for your
much.
time.
Yeah, no problem. No, and I know I do this every year, but if you're ever around the school or in the area, feel free to stop by, check out what's going on. I think you'd be very excited to see what the kids are doing and what's happening.
Thank you.
Okay,
you.
great, thank you so much.
Thanks again.
All right,
Have a good night.
same to you, thank you.
And look at that, we're almost right back on time. Planned it.
Did good.
Good night, thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, David, it's all you.
Yeah, so it's just 3 budgets. I'll do it from here if it's okay, or I can move over.
I'll start budget
Um,
1220.
Board of Selectmen budget, really, the selection act for a level services budget, that's what we did. There's only 2 changes, which is just both contractual, which is my salary and the 2 girls, well, ladies that are in the office. Other than that, there's no other changes.
That's pretty easy.
Yeah.
And then the other 2 are even easier, they're yours. The finance committee one is level funded, and your finance reserve is level funded as well, both of these expenses handled.
What were the meetings that we always talk about, but we don't go to? We put 1,000 in, are there?
Excuse me. Every time I get notification of those annual meetings, it's either right up to the date or just passed.
It's too late, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we funded a handful of years ago. Quite frankly, when we funded it for this committee, everybody was pretty new. And so the thought process, to Meredith's credit, was she was like, we have a bunch of new members, let's put some money in it. So if people have time or the inclination, if they want to get some class time, you have the budget. Obviously, you can still do that because the money's there.
Right.
But many of you now have become more seasoned. So, you know, you now understand it better and all that. So, you know, it's from my standpoint, it's interesting to watch because year after year, you hear the same budgets and you see the same budgets and you're getting more comfortable. But the money is there and should remain there in case you ever want to take any of those classes.
I'd like to maybe interested in see what's available.
Right.
Yeah, and when you've sent them before, it's been kind of late to
Last minute.
Adjust, yeah. But maybe we'll get a new member.
That would be exciting.
We want to make them available, if
That's true.
you know. Okay.
Any questions on those budgets? All right, looks like we're back to the special town meeting articles.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, I got you started on you were explaining it so well, and I went, uh-oh, we went too far. I didn't realize how involved it's been.
Yeah, no, we had a few meetings and we did, you know, like I said, we went and toured what's available and you know, that we do need to kind of beef up our offerings for the kids is, you know, we really could use some space and some facilities. There are particular challenges with what we have out there, like I was saying, with the water problems in some of the fields and the scheduling conflicts. There's a lot more kids and they can't even accommodate all, you
Of
know,
what we have.
Yeah.
Never mind what's coming in.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, like I said, we went to, which school is it where the basketball court is?
Howard.
The Howard School. There's really no place for people to watch the game. When you stand at at one of the baskets on the end, you're actually out of bounds. Like the basket is.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, and there's no sidelines. Like you know, they can run into the walls, and then you know, if it's raining or snowing, there's water coming in and it ends up on the court, and so there's some challenges. They only really let the younger kids play there. They can't really let the older kids. So there's a lot of challenges with what we have. So, you know, we did think about all the opportunities to, like, you know, is there anything we can do here or any other places in town? And there really isn't a lot of land that the town already owns. So this came up and David did a great job negotiating on the price. And then John did some drawings about how we could lay it all out and stuff, just to give us some ideas of what we thought we could fit there. And it seems like it might be a pretty good fit.
Wow.
You know.
Couple of fields, you think? I mean, couple
Yeah,
of
I
soccer
think he had
fields
like
and.
one soccer field and one kind of all-purpose field. And then there was the walking trails, parking, an indoor basketball court.
Indoor? You're gonna build a building on it?
Yeah, that's what we
Oh,
talked
really?
about, right? Yeah. And then with bathrooms and a little snack bar. And we did talk about pickleball courts. I don't know if we ended up leaving those or pulling them out, but we talked about those being better over by the senior center because
Between the Friendship Park, we were talking about putting equipment there for.
there's kind of space there, and they
Yeah.
came and they said they'd like to have them, and it's right there. So
Old people like pickleball.
yeah, and it's I mean there's room there, right?
Lots of people
I
like
can
pickleball.
I'll try.
So it seemed like a pretty good, you know, and in the proximity to the school, it's not really that far away. You know, it would have been nice to be able to have them, you know,
In
where
a
they could
central
walk, but
location, yeah.
it's really not a lot of property to get there, so it seemed like a good opportunity to get the land and try to work something out down there.
Did you look at all the pieces of land that the town already owns and kind of evaluated it?
Nothing that
I
big.
mean, we just didn't have anything that big, right? We talked about that.
We did, so we looked at a whole bunch of inventory, and just about everything that we own is in conservation land.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we couldn't try to pull it out, but the
Right.
reasons in conservation
Conservation,
land.
right.
Because usually it's land that's not usable.
Yeah.
I would say this, and David's mentioned it many times, that we buy this and it's a good buy at 600 grand. If worse came to worse and we had to sell it,
Yeah, we could.
we'd make money on it.
Yeah, yeah,
But at least it's out of the inventory,
yeah,
so to speak. That
yeah.
But that's not the intention, of course.
No,
No, the
That
intention
was like
is-
worst case scenario,
Worst
if we buy the land and then we can't move forward with the,
I
you know.
see.
So not putting the
Gotcha.
town in a bad position.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
You know.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have to vote on recommendations on the warrant articles.
I move to approve the first Article 1,
Vote
second,
to recommend.
to recommend.
All right. A motion to recommend Article 1. Is there a second?
second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, and Jerry can't vote. I'm waiting for Jerry to chime in. She can't. Sorry, Jerry.
No, I'm just listening, it's very interesting.
You can comment if you have questions.
Jerry can vote. Technically, what you really need to do is do a roll call vote.
Oh,
Oh, I thought she couldn't vote. She
No,
wasn't part of the
She
board.
can vote, but she can't count towards form.
Oh, okay, great, okay.
All right, it's an aye or a nay for you. Owen?
It's an aye.
You all should, it's technically by law, you have to say, so it should be Anderson, yes, and so forth and so on. So that way, everybody knows how Jerry voted.
okay.
Anderson, yes. Next.
Adams, yes.
Fox, yes.
McCarthy, yes.
Weatherby, yes.
Burns, yes.
Hey, Scrunchy.
Reggie, yes.
Thank you.
Hey, Scrunchy.
All right, let's move on to, so moved, right? Yeah.
Right.
That's so moved. So recommended.
Recommended.
There we go. Article 2. This is for $100,000 to design and engineer the complex.
Did we get a price for this, or is this
Yeah,
a
where did that
ballparker,
number
or?
It's just from talking to some engineers, but truthfully, we don't have a real number at this point. You know, I think it's going to be enough for what we need to do. The idea that the engineer is going to do three things for us. One is that they will design the fields, because they should be giving us options at the Recreational Space Committee. We could do, like John has suggested, a multi-purpose field, a field, indoor, outdoor courts, that type of stuff. Maybe you change it around, you do it artificial turf versus natural turf, where it can fit all that. So they gotta engineer it. The second thing they have to do is that they have to provide us some pricing information. So they'll be able to determine a ballpark price as to what everything is going to cost.
Do we have an idea going into this?
No, because we don't know, we don't know as to whether or not, are we really gonna have 2 pickleball courts or basketball courts? Are we really gonna have indoor facilities or not? There's no way for us to know until we really identify what we can do there. But it wouldn't surprise us that one field, artificial turf field, is about $1 million. So if you were to put 2 of them on there, that's 2. If you do,
Yeah.
if you do lights, do you not want to do lights?
Scoreboards.
So it's not just
You get a septic system,
700,000.
Oh,
too.
no.
It's a much
Oh,
bigger
yeah,
price
Yeah,
tag.
Oh,
septic
yeah.
systems and parking lot and runoff, and there's a lot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
$600,000 is just to acquire the property.
just the property.
Do we want to do one artificial and one not artificial? Do we want to do both artificial? Do we want to just do both of them grass?
Yeah.
All of those are gonna have to get vetted out.
Yeah,
And
and there's big cost differences, so it's a lot to consider, I think, you know.
then the third thing that the person will do, or the organization will do, is they will help bid out the project. Because all of this is gonna have to get bid out, overseen, and administered. So I'm hoping that's going to be enough money. But the first thing we have to do is get the ball rolling to really identify what can we do, how would it be engineered, and what will it cost. At that point, we have to go back to the town. She can't do anything else at that point.
No, right.
So I think to Mo's point earlier, let's assume we come up with, and for whatever reason, nothing is feasible. Well, then we have to go, I think we'd sell it, right? I mean, we're not gonna keep it to keep it.
Right.
The assessed value on it is just under $800,000.
Yeah.
So just, everybody in this house, in this room, knows that your assessed value is lower than what you could sell it for, right? So we're actually already a couple of $100,000 below assessed value.
Yeah.
Never mind what we could probably sell it for.
Right.
So at that point, if we had to, we'd have to sell it off. But as Jan said earlier, and we've all concurred, we need fields. It's a
Yeah,
growing town.
kids are underserved.
There's-
Yeah.
They are underserved. As Mark Morris from Southeast Regional said earlier, we're bucking the trend. We have actually growth of children in this town at our local level, which is a lot of them are not, because we have more middle-aged families moving in with children. They're gonna want those fields.
And we talked about the current soccer fields that are over there now, and, you know, what could we do to make them more usable and
Yeah.
make, really would be a pretty decent investment and for not as much gain as you would get doing something like this.
So what would happen to that space? Would it still have to be maintained at the Howard School and still, so it's,
Yeah, I mean, I think it can still be used. I was trying to remember, didn't, the girl from the high school said she could still have soccer practices and stuff
Sure.
there, you know, as long as it's dry.
Right.
That's
But
the
there was
kicker.
something else, wasn't there
Yeah.
something
Well,
else?
since
she
the
said?
septic,
pun
when the
intended.
septic went in at that
They
end
could use
towards
it
106, it
Jan,
Yeah, so there
was
was,
ever drainage was ever designed into that field? Or-
I don't know, what happened there
No,
in terms
well, if
of
you
why
remember,
it's so
the
wet.
septic
they
in
put the septic.
Oh,
a few
yeah,
years
yeah,
ago,
yeah.
when they raised that kind of made that wetter down towards the church side, because we used to, a million
is that
years
what-
ago,
There was
play
no
soccer and
consideration
t-ball
for
over
what to
there.
do with
Yeah.
that
But now it's
water,
a septic
though.
system.
Oh, I didn't realize that, okay.
I
Did
forgot
she
about
say
that.
there was something else they could use that?
yeah, so there's 3 different sports that they like to use it for. It's soccer, lacrosse,
Oh,
and
lacrosse.
field hockey.
Yeah, that's new too. That's become very
So
popular.
between all the high school sports and the youth sports, truthfully, it's just being overused.
Yeah,
And if you have a couple in with a wet spring or a wet fall, then you're really in trouble.
Yeah.
Last year, a whole bunch of games were canceled. A lot of the youth sports, their home games are actually not home.
Right, yeah, we
Um,
play in other towns.
And so,
I don't
this
have
really
that.
is an opportunity to be able to probably, again, we haven't worked all this out yet, predominantly allow the Howard School fields to be chiefly used more maybe by the schools.
Hmm.
And then these other ones would be for the other youth sport organizations. And there's still gonna be some crossover, because we just still won't have enough space. But
Yeah, and there could be some potential to actually, rent them out a little bit, right?
correct. So that's part of what we wanna look at, is that can
Revenue.
this complex become some type of a revenue source as well? Because there are 2 long-term issues. One is, can it be a revenue source, which would be fantastic,
Yeah.
but 2, they've gotta be maintained.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say, you have to
There'll be
pay
some
for it,
ongoing
ongoing,
costs.
yeah.
Right.
So can we raise enough to cover those ongoing costs? Again, this design engineer should be able to give us some answers on that.
Yeah.
This is what they're gonna do, this is what their specialty is gonna be. And that's why I'm hoping 100,000 is enough. We haven't been out to bid.
Yeah.
They're gonna be required to do a lot for us.
Are
Right.
you thinking of this as more of like a community center? Or is this specifically like a sports arena?
Sports.
I think it's, I'm envisioning more of a sports complex.
Yeah.
Specifically.
Correct.
That's
So,
what we've been talking about.
correct. Yeah, I don't think there's been any discussion about it being a community center.
I mean,
No.
have you ever been to the one over in Bridgewater, behind the police station?
Yes.
Off of 104? So they have like a nice little area, they've got a bunch of things.
is
So you're thinking
It's pretty-
something
it's pretty
like
big.
that?
Something to
That's
that.
more than 8
They don't-
acres.
That's a lot more than 8 acres, but what I'm
Yeah,
saying
that's
though
bigger
is a
than-
place that you go and it has things you can eat, you have a little venue. There's other things, not only is it just your youth sports, but there's invitationals and other things, and it can make some money.
Yeah.
Well, I don't see a
Hopefully-
downside.
But you have to, right, you have to start
Who's
somewhere.
gonna run it? Would it be the YAA, the YFA, the
Well, these
town?
AAU things that are
Well,
going
again, all of
on.
that's gonna have to get flushed out. I think
Right.
there's a whole bunch of different ways that we can approach it. I'm just speaking off the top of my head because this hasn't been vetted, and obviously I'm not the final decision maker on it, but it's town-owned land. So I think the town would have to ultimately have control as to how and who is managing it and maintaining it.
We're not gonna create a Parks and Rec department, right?
Hopefully not.
I mean, that's the only, that's not been discussed, but we're gonna have to figure something out. I mean, it's.
I know.
And that's gonna have to all be part of the presentation when we go back to the town to say, okay, we're going to spend X amount of dollars on this. This is how we're gonna pay for it. Long-term, this is what it's gonna cost us, and this is how we think we're going to maintain it, whatever that is, you know? Is that, I'll use what you said, are we going to have a Parks and Rec department? Are we going to have a private organization that comes in and manages it and pays us a fee and recoups some of that expense? That's what we do at the golf course.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So, and that's worked out very well. We actually are making money on that. So, you know, like, all of that is still has to be flushed out.
But baby steps, you gotta see if it'll fly first.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm not sure we voted, did we? Was
We
there a
have
motion
We need a motion on
I'll
to,
make the motion.
to
Approve Article
recommend,
two.
to recommend article?
Recommend, yes.
All right, first, is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, first and seconded, any further discussion? All those, what do I say now? All those in favor say aye. Anderson, aye.
Adams, aye.
Fox, aye.
McCarthy, aye.
Weatherby, aye.
Burns, aye.
Hey, Scrunchy.
Frenchie, yes.
Okay.
All right, so moved. We have moved to recommend both articles. Does anyone have anything else to bring before the committee?
And please note, the special town meeting is at 6 o'clock, not 7 o'clock.
6 on the 30th.
Oh, I was wondering about that. Yes, Monday, the 30th.
Okay.
All right, would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I will make the motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Sorry.
Somebody seconded.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Weatherby, aye.
Yeah, when is our next meeting?
Next meeting is in 2 weeks.
Should have childcare
19th.
though.
Yes, the 19th.
2 weeks.
Do we?